Hey everyone, James Lynch here. This is Early Look, the show where we take a look at an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we're going to be looking at the highly anticipated strawweight rematch between Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Weili Zhang coming up UFC 275, June 11th in Singapore. I'll give a full in-depth preview of this fight and give my pick at the very end. But before we get into that, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. That way you won't miss updates on this channel. I'm posting content on here every single day. Obviously got to mention the fact that my voice is not 100% today, so apologies for that, but hopefully you guys can get through this and we can get our preview and pick. Okay, so like I mentioned it there, UFC 275 going down at the Singapore Indoor Stadium in Singapore. And one key thing about this fight that, I mean, at the time of recording this, it's still the case. It's only a 3-round rematch between Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So not 5 rounds like their first fight had. It's a non-title fight. Obviously, neither are champion, and really excited for this one. Okay, let's dig into it here. We're going to start first with the former strawweight, they're both former strawweight champions. What should I say? We'll start with Joanna Jędrzejczyk first, because obviously a lot of people excited to see her back in action here. So you see it there, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, 16-4 record. She's got 4 knockouts, 1 submission, and 11 decisions. She's not ranked right now because of the lack of activity. She hasn't fought in a while. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is 34 years old. She's 5'6" with a 65.5-inch reach. She's the former strawweight champion, like I mentioned there. She's the first Polish-born and first female European champion in UFC history. She, of course, was, one sort of leading the pack with the strawweight division when it first was brought to fruition. And she's also a BJJ blue belt. And we know that she trains at American Top Team, one of the best gyms in the world. Now, Joanna Jędrzejczyk made her amateur debut back in March of 2012. She actually fought Karolina Kowalkiewicz in her amateur debut, which is interesting. They would obviously go on to fight in the UFC. Her first MMA fight professionally was in May of 2012, so not much longer after she made her amateur debut. She didn't make her UFC debut until July of 2014, when she fought Juliana Lima. That was a decision win for her there. And overall, she's got a 10-4 UFC record with just 2 stoppage wins, which is kind of interesting because when you think of Joanna Jędrzejczyk, you think of her striking, but just the 2 wins, and those were early on. You can see it there. Some of her notable wins include Claudia Gadelha. She defeated her twice. Carla Esparza, who at the time of recording this is the current strawweight champion. You've also got wins over Jessica Penne, which was a total dominant fight. And then she also defeated Jessica Andrade and Michelle Waterson. Those are some of the notable names. Tisha Torres as well. She's a ranked opponent too, but those are all some of her notable wins. Her notable losses are all pretty notable. I mean, we're talking about some of the best fighters in the world in both women's divisions. We've got 2 losses here to Rose Namajunas. The first Rose loss was brutal. She got finished in the first round there. The rematch, a little bit closer. We'll talk about that later. Then obviously went up to flyweight to take on flyweight champion, at the time it was a vacant title, Valentina Shevchenko, losing a decision there. And then of course her last fight was against Weili Zhang. They're having their rematch obviously on June 11th, but in their first fight, she lost a split decision to Zhang in that fight. Now, one thing with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, which is a bit surprising this time around, is, she's been pretty active throughout her career. If you look at it here, she's fought pretty much twice a year, sometimes even 3 times a year prior to this last fight. For the most part, she's been pretty active, but I added it up. It's going to be 826 days when Joanna Jędrzejczyk steps in the cage the last time she had a fight. Of course, that Zhang fight at UFC 248 was back in March of 2020, so really long layoff coming into that one. The second closest long layoff she's had was actually the Waterson to the Weili Zhang fight. That was 116 days, so not too bad there, but 826, it's a really long layoff for any fighter going into a matchup. Now, one key thing here with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she hasn't had any major injuries throughout her career. If you look at her record, usually we'll say, fight withdrawn due to injury, whatever. That hasn't really been the case for her, so that's one thing with her. She's done a good job of keeping healthy, although the last fight with Zhang had some serious hematoma. She wasn't going to come back anytime soon after that, especially with how big that hematoma was. Now, Joanna Jędrzejczyk has had a couple close fights in her career. First, let's talk about the first Claudia Gadelha fight, which I think people forget. You see it here, UFC on Fox 13, Dos Santos versus Miocic back in December of 2014. Majority of the media members actually scored the fight for Claudia Gadelha. You can see it there, 12 media members scoring it for Claudia, 2 for Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Pretty crazy to look back at that fight. The other close fight that Joanna Jędrzejczyk had was the rematch against Rose Namajunas. I personally thought Rose clearly won, but I actually went back and looked. There was a few media members who scored it for her. So 18 media members scored the fight for Rose Namajunas, just 4 scoring it for Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I was actually surprised to see even 4 people said that, but I remember watching that fight and thinking Rose clearly won. I was actually in person for that one. And then the last fight she had against Weili Zhang was a close fight, a split decision loss back in March of 2020 at UFC 248. 15 media members scoring the fight for Weili Zhang, 6 media members scoring it for Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So take that for what it's worth. Before we we get into the rest of today's breakdown, I want to talk about my sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an amazing online resource where you can learn about pretty much anything in the digital media space. I recently took the Aaron McGough TikTok course. It was awesome, learned so much. I started a TikTok last year. I had no idea what I was doing, but Aaron does a really good job going through some of the key things you need to know when promoting content on TikTok. And don't just take my word for it. They have reviews of other people who have taken the course as well, so you can get an idea of what to expect. I also get asked all the time how I edit my videos, how I edit my thumbnails. They have great resources for learning Premiere Pro, for learning Photoshop. So I highly recommend checking this out. The first 1,000 people to use the link in the description or my code on the screen here will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. And then after that, it's super cheap for a monthly membership. So check that out and we'll get back to the breakdown. All right, let's take a look at Weili Zhang and what she brings to the table here. 21-3 record. You can see it there. She's got 10 knockouts, 7 submission victories, and 4 decisions. She is 32 years old. She's going to be 33 in August. It's actually interesting. Her and Joanna Jędrzejczyk have the same birthday month. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is born on the 18th, whereas Weili Zhang is born on the 13th, as you can see there. So as you can see, Weili Zhang is 5'4". She's got a 63-inch reach, so she'll be a little bit smaller than Joanna Jędrzejczyk when they meet in the rematch. And the other notable thing with Weili Zhang is that she's a BJJ purple belt. Now you'll see here, Weili Zhang did not have an amateur debut. She went right into it. As far as her MMA career goes, she made her MMA debut in November of 2013 and actually lost. And this is something I talked about in the last edition of Early Look. There's a lot of really good fighters who lost their pro debut. Kind of interesting there. Did not make her UFC debut until August of 2018. So that was against Danielle Taylor. She ended up winning that fight by decision. She's 5-2 in the UFC with 3 stoppage victories. Some notable wins include Tisha Torres, Jessica Andrade, and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, which we obviously referenced earlier in this. And there are 2 notable losses to Rose Namajunas. One was a decisive loss, obviously getting finished in the first round by that head kick knockout. And then she had the split decision loss with Rose, and we'll talk about the scorecards for that in a second here. She never really had any major injuries in her career, although I did find this interesting sort of as a tidbit. I didn't realize she's supposed to fight at Rise 10 back in May of 2018 against Kanako Murata, who's also in the UFC now. So kind of one of those what ifs, but yeah, she had a shoulder ligament injury in that one, but outside of that, pretty healthy overall in terms of her skill set. All right, I mentioned the close fights. We'll talk about the first fight with Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Like I mentioned it earlier, UFC 248, 15 media members scoring the fight for Weili Zhang, only 6 scoring it for Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So again, most people thought that Zhang did win the fight. And then as far as the win, or the loss, I should say, she had to Rose Namajunas, the split decision loss in her last fight back in November of 2021. That was at UFC 268. 14 media members scoring the fight for Rose Namajunas, 1 scoring in a draw, and 6 scoring it for Weili Zhang. So again, 6 people thought that Zhang deserved to get the nod. Taking a look at the current odds, you'll see most books here have Weili Zhang as the favorite in this fight. So what is going to be my pick as far as the odds go? My pick is also going to be Weili Zhang. What it comes down to me is a couple things. I know their first fight was close, but you got to look at the fact that Joanna Jędrzejczyk has that huge layoff, the 800 and however many days I mentioned there, 826 days, whereas Weili Zhang has been a lot more active. Since then, Weili Zhang, I think, has gotten better. Her time training at Fight Ready, I think, really paid dividends. We saw that in the rematch with Rose Namajunas, where that fight was pretty close. I just think you're seeing a much more improved fighter here, and I think with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, maybe the time off was good to maybe heal some injuries, but I just think the activity level for Weili Zhang is one of the reasons to like her in this fight. We know that Zhang obviously can pack a punch. She can, certainly, hold her own in the striking department as well. And, let's not look past her win over Andrade. I mean, no one's really done that to Andrade recently. A 42-second win there. I think it just shows the level of power that she has in her shots here. So, and add in the fact she's already got the win over Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I think there's way more at stake here for Joanna Jędrzejczyk than there is for Weili Zhang, because I'm going to put a little hypothetical scenario here for you. I mean, if Weili Zhang loses this fight, she can always move up to 125. She has not fought Valentina Shevchenko yet. She hasn't tested the waters in that division, and I think she'd be a little bit small, but at least there's that option. Joanna Jędrzejczyk's already done that, right? Like if she loses this fight and wants to move up, the options are kind of slim at this point, because I don't think there's any reason to give her a rematch against Valentina Shevchenko unless she picks up a nice win streak here. So from a pressure standpoint, I think as well, Weili Zhang has that on her side. She doesn't have to worry about it as much. And like I mentioned, she's a little bit younger too. And I just really think that some of the improvements we've seen her make, despite the fact she's coming off 2 losses, I mean, she got caught by Rose in the first fight, but again, I think the rematch showed that both fighters are pretty similar here. And I thought that Rose fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk a lot better. It was a lot more decisive of a win than the rematch that Weili Zhang had against Rose Namajunas. Sort of using some MMA math here as well to sort of add to my argument too. But my official pick is going to be Weili Zhang by decision. I know, and again, it's only a 3-round fight. So I think, if it was longer, maybe you favor Joanna just because of that championship experience. But You know, Weili Zhang, like I said, for 3 rounds, she's used to fighting that, and I think she'll go out there and perform really well in the matchup. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking in this rematch? 3 rounds, like I said, between Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Weili Zhang. How do you think they get it done? Do you think the odds are right? And what do you think about some of the stats here? Do you think they mean anything? I'm always curious to hear your thoughts, and hopefully we can have a nice discussion in the comment section about this fight if you guys are interested in that. Again, another apologies for my voice here today, a little bit under the weather, but I got to get these done. I want to get these early look shows out for you guys as soon as possible. So really appreciate that. Just another reminder, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you won't miss any updates on this channel as I'm posting content on here every single day. And lastly, make sure you follow me on social media at Lynch on Sports. The links are in the description, but it's just at Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching. One last thing I got to mention, if there's any other notable fights you guys want me to preview, let me know in the comments. I have a whole list of fights that I will be previewing over the next bit, but if there's certain interest in certain fights, definitely want to hear from you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and really appreciate you tuning into this breakdown of Early Look.
With that original flow, head kicks with the pros, picks of the fights or anything in the mix. Getting closer to the heart of the flame, bringing conversations with heavy hitting names. You feel the love of the game.